Good evening, America. Welcome to Fox News Tonight. I'm Lawrence Jones. So for the second day in a row, the left's radical agenda took a major blow in the Supreme Court. President Biden is throwing a fit after his student loan bailout got struck down. More on that in a minute. But first, while the left lost today, the First Amendment got a huge win. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of a Colorado web designer named Lori Smith, who sued the state of Colorado over a law that would have required her to create wedding websites for same-sex couples. Now, it's similar to the Colorado baker who won a similar case before the court in 2018. The left immediately reacted by making predictable claims about attacks on gay rights. But that's not what it's about. Even Smith, the web designer, says that this is not about choosing who to work with. It's, quote, about choosing the message that I'm being asked to promote. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre complained that the ruling takes us backwards.
First, we are deeply disappointed in the Supreme Court's decision today in 303 Creative, which takes our nation backward in the fight for equality. This decision undermines the basic truth that no American should face discrimination for who they are or who they love. And it's even more disappointing as we close out Pride Month.
The vice president agreed with the press secretary. She claimed the decision, quote, threatens future progress. Kamala also said the court paves the way for businesses to, quote, discriminate in the name of free expression. So let's get this straight. Adhering to your religious beliefs is now discrimination. Kamala might have gotten her talking points from CNN, which said the same exact thing about the decision this morning.
A lot of people worrying about things like Jim Crow. Could somebody decide that they want black folks to come in the back door because they don't want them in their store? I mean, how far might this go?
The First Amendment is being used as a shield for bigotry. The First Amendment is being used as a shield for discrimination.
Wow. They weren't trying to hide it. Their disdain for the First Amendment. And that was just the reaction to the first major ruling today. Shortly after the Supreme Court handed down that decision, they struck down Joe Biden's unconstitutional student loan forgiveness plan. Now, that shouldn't have been a surprise. The President of the United States just can't erase debt with the stroke of a pen. Even after the ruling, Biden said the court got it wrong.
Mr. President, you can't say you overstepped your authority. Did you overstep your authority?
I think the court misinterpreted the Constitution.
But he wasn't done. Then Biden painted the decision as an attack on working class Americans.
You know, these Republican officials just couldn't bear the thought of providing relief for working class, middle class Americans. I'm never going to stop fighting for you. We'll use every tool at our disposal to get you the student debt relief you need and reach your dreams.
Okay, so here are the facts. Just over a third of Americans over 25 have a four-year degree. Biden wants to force every other American, including the majority who don't have degrees, to pay for everyone else to take out loans at their expense. According to Forbes, the highest income earning households in America hold 60% of all student debt. So this is a handout for the wealthy, if there ever was one. Why should everyday middle-class Americans pay for the elite to go to college? Now, despite the ruling, it looks like the Biden administration is going to ignore the Supreme Court and try to forgive student loans anyway. Here's the Education Secretary today.
I strongly disagree with the court's decision here. So today, I want to assure our students, our borrowers, and families across America, our fight is not over. We're taking action.
So they don't respect our institutions. It's not hard to see why the administration will do everything it can to help their elite left-wing voters who have gender studies degree. Even MSNBC admitted this is all about fulfilling a political campaign promise. Watch.
This is an enormous setback for this president and this administration in a campaign promise and something that they were hoping was going to be critical, especially for young voters heading in to the 2024 election. But I can tell you now, checking in with sources inside the White House on their reaction, that it is one of vowing to fight back.
So there it is. Student loan forgiveness is all about winning young voters. It's a scam to enrich Joe Biden's voters. But now that it's failed, Joe Biden isn't taking responsibility.
Mr. President, why did you give millions of borrowers false hope? You've doubted your own authority here in the past.
I didn't give any false hope. The question was whether or not I would do even more than was requested. What I did, I thought was appropriate and was able to be done and would get done. I didn't give borrowers false hope, but the Republicans snatched away the hope that they were given, and it's real hope. Thank you.
Republicans snatched it away. Vivek Ramaswamy is a 2024 presidential candidate. He joins us now. Vivek, before I get into the merits of all of this, I thought Joe Biden and the Democrats were going to restore order to the country. That means respecting the co-equal branch, like the Supreme Court, right?
Well, look, I think it's one of the reasons why we have a Supreme Court. It's days and weeks like the one that we have now, which I'm actually quite hopeful about, that remind us what the three-branch system of government was supposed to be all about. And now the Supreme Court has become the backstop for actually standing up for the Constitution. Lawrence, you know this well. It's the administrative state today that has wielded power far more than Congress does, even far more than the president who leads the executive branch does. But the Supreme Court has proven itself, thankfully, to be actually the backstop for freedom in this country, whether that's religious freedom, whether that's the freedom of the people to make sure that the administrative state, like the education secretary, doesn't make unconstitutional laws by fiat.
Well, that's what it's all about, right? The president, even Nancy Pelosi has said it in the past, doesn't have the authority to do such action, right?
Yeah, look, I think that what's really interesting is the Department of Education is a good example of a department that should not have existed in the first place. So in many cases, I don't even think this was necessarily Biden driving this as much as the administrative state, along with Biden, doing something that Congress could have never done because the people of this country would have voted them out if Congress tried to. So the really important part is this builds on West Virginia versus EPA. That was a case last year where the Supreme Court held that certain regulations passed by the EPA were unconstitutional. Now they held that actually the student loan forgiveness plan implemented by the Department of Education is also unlawful. If that's the case, I'm looking at my presidency. If I'm elected president, most of those federal regulations put out by the administrative state are also unconstitutional, and I will rescind them accordingly. So this is actually a really powerful week for the Supreme Court and for the United States. I think we're going to see over the next year in a positive way what the consequences of these decisions really are.
Vivek, the next question is why? Why take this action? It's clearly about votes, right?
Yeah, well, look, Biden is oldest trick in the playbook. Bribe the voter into voting for you. So rain money from on high like manna from heaven. Problem is our government's gotten into a bad habit of paying people to do the exact opposite of the thing that we would want them to do. Pay people to stay at home instead of actually going to work. Pay single mothers more money not to have the man in the house than to have the man in the house. And now what do we see in the student loan forgiveness case? Paying students, actually, the people who don't repay their loans effectively more than the people who work hard to actually do it. What I've said is, as U.S. president, I'm going to reverse that trend. Stop using federal taxpayer dollars to pay people to do things that are not only harmful to themselves, but harmful to our country.
Jim. Vivek, what is your position on the affirmative action case that was just ruled on, by the Supreme Court?
I think the Supreme Court came down squarely on the right side of this issue. I have been an opponent to affirmative action for my entire adult life. What I will say is that this is just a first step. This is not a destination. The colleges, the elite universities, are already taking steps for workarounds, reducing the value of test scores or any quantitative metrics in their weightings as a way through the back door of achieving the same racial outcomes. Under my watch, I will direct the Department of Justice to put an end to those illegal backdoor practices as well. Think about the economy as well, Lawrence. Lyndon Johnson signed an executive order that requires any government contractor, that's 20% of the workforce in America today, employed by one of those companies, has to adopt race-based quota systems to be able to do business with the federal government. I'll rescind that executive order. So I think we need to use this Supreme Court decision on college admissions as a starting point, as a catalyst to end race-based preferences in every sphere of American life and revive meritocracy.
Vivek Ramaswamy, thanks so much for joining the program. So
Thank
the
you.
Democratic Party, you got it. So the Democratic Party is sure to face political blowback for the Supreme Court's decision to strike down Biden's student debt plan. Biden's attempt to bribe voters failed. The left is responding, as they always do, to deflect from their own failures. Members of the squad are crying racism.
What the court did today really is setting us back and is really unfortunate. What you're seeing is severe backlash in the sense that people do not want to see black and brown people excel in this country. And I think it's a really something that is unfortunate that we have to pay attention to, and allowing the courts to legitimize and license discrimination in this kind of way really makes our country not the country that we want it to be.
Okay, that was a lot of like mamba jumbo, but what she was essentially saying, if you oppose debt forgiveness, you're racist. Will Kane is the co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, and he's been kind enough to join us on set. He'll be back here next week in this chair. Will, this is Biden's fault, right? He gave them a little taste of it, and then he took it away because he knew it, right?
He did, and I was listening to what you said. Will Democrats pay the price for this failed bribe? Forgive me for just a moment if I sound like I'm a sophomore in college who just took philosophy. You're familiar with Plato's allegory of the cave? I thought of this while I was listening to you. The allegory is that if you had a man chained up in a cave who was forced to stare at the wall with the fire at his back, that if he sat there in that position for his entire life, he would think the shadows that the fire was casting up on the wall was reality. And if someone came in and cut that man's chains and allowed him to see the world as it really is, allowed him to see reality, what would be the first thing that he would do? He would kill the man that would reveal to him reality. Many people like to live in their false reality with their false promises and with their false bribes. You know, Biden is in essence, those 43 million people that bought into this student loan debt forgiveness scam, Lawrence, they were the townspeople who watched a man come in selling a magic elixir. It's going to make you 10 years younger and your skin will be clear.
Right.
All you have to do is drink this snake oil. Now that they've woken up and somebody goes, whoa, you look awful, man. Are they likely to take it out on the guy who sold them the snake oil? Are they likely to take it out on Joe Biden and Democrats? Or are they more likely to turn on reality and that those who revealed to them reality? I'm a little bit afraid that all of this talk and all of this, it's the Republicans' fault, will be just yet another bottle of snake oil that they'll successfully sell to the people.
But Will, that was by design, right? That was by design to turn it on the Republicans. I mean, and I'm not talking about the American, but I mean no disrespect, but there's a lot of voters that don't understand constitutional law and understands the procedures where it takes. I mean, we can play the Nancy Pelosi bite all day. There are some people that aren't watching Fox to get that information.
Yeah.
If you watch MSNBC and CNN, they're telling you it was the Republicans' court that struck this down, not something that was illegal.
That's right. I'm going to tell you one person that knew that it was unconstitutional. His name is Joe Biden. He knew when he signed the bill. He knew, I probably don't have the power to do this. And it makes it all the more egregious, Lawrence, that he has now said today he's going to double down on selling you more snake oil. You know, this, as you mentioned in your your monologue is the party that promises to restore norms, to restore the integrity of America's institutions. And whenever any institution or any political party stands in the way of them accomplishing their agenda, they go about tearing down the very thing. The party that says they're here to defend democracy will tear down every institution of our republic. And it's already begun. You've seen them say it today. It's time to pack the court. There will be impeachment hearings. They will suggest term limits for the Supreme Court justices. And I have no doubt you will see people once again on the lawns of justices of the Supreme Court. They will tear down the institutions of our republic to save their beloved democracy.
Unbelievable. It's going to hurt us all at the end of the day. Make sure you tune in to watch Will when he hosts this show all next week. But he's also on Fox and Friends tomorrow and Sunday. So you got to watch that too.
So I got to go to bed.
That's right.
Amen. Thank you.